It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in.
Look forward to that. Hopefully y'all can see my screen now. This is the presentation I put together for this, and we're gonna walk through walk through the importance of location when securing a real estate deal. So first, I've already kind of introduced myself. I am the founder and CEO of Pachira Financials, which is my financial services company. I'm a tax preparer, I'm a bookkeeper, also do financial planning, financial advisory. Financial literacy is huge to me, so I'm a financial literacy coach. I'm a licensed CPA. As I mentioned, I am a Howard University graduate, so shout out all the HBCU graduates out there. And also I am a real estate investor, primarily in Southeast DC. So today we're going to talk about pretty much like the three main community types that you should consider when you are purchasing real estate. We're going to then talk about politics and economics and how that can impact your real estate location. And then we're going to talk about things to consider when looking for a personal property and things to consider when looking for a rental property. So let's get right into it. All right, so the main difference between the three types of communities that you probably are familiar with is urban, suburban, and rural communities. And this is big because this will really dictate the type of environment that your property is going to be in. The main thing that distinguishes these three community types is population size, right? So if you're looking for more of a rental property, maybe an urban community where there's a higher population size, more jobs, a political hub, maybe more convenient. If you're maybe looking for a family home, maybe somewhere in a suburban or rural area. The different community types have their pros and cons. I kind of mentioned before, for me, if I was looking for a rental property, personally, I would want to be in an urban area just because it's more people, more jobs. The real estate markets do tend to be more expensive, but it's mainly just because there's more people there, high foot traffic, high demand type of areas. Suburban areas I feel like are good for families. Obviously, the typical 2.5 kids, dogs, single family homes, stuff like that, they tend to find in suburban areas. So if you are looking to rent, it just really depends on your target audience, whether you're trying to rent to young professionals, young adults who might want to stay there for a year or two and you're going to get someone new every year, or whether you want to actually rent to families. So maybe a suburban area might be more ideal. Suburban areas tend to have mid-sized populations. They do tend to sometimes be political hubs. They can be political hubs. They can be economic centers. You'll see that most people who live in the suburbs work in an urban area or a nearby city. So sometimes what a lot of people do when they're purchasing real estate, if they can't afford to purchase in the city, they will end up purchasing outside of the city, something like that. So also we have your rural areas. These places, I feel like I don't personally know anyone who invests in rural areas, except if you're going into like farming or there's some big manufacturing plant, or you're looking for a commercial space for like, or a warehouse type, those type of properties, I feel like are better for rural areas where there's a lot of space and you can kind of get more bang for your buck, meaning more square footage for a lower price. So I kind of just wanted to go through just the main differences between the three main types of communities, because that's really what you really want to consider. The first thing you should consider when you're really thinking about what property you want to go to is, what kind of area do I even want to be in? Do I want to be in an urban area where there's public transportation, where there's a lot of restaurants and bars and high energy, or do I want to be in a more suburban area where things are a lot more slowed down? Housing prices might be a little bit cheaper, more square footage, things like that. So now that we've talked about the different types of communities, let's talk about the political and economic factors that can impact where you want to purchase your home. As I mentioned before, like you really want to consider what you want to do with that property, because that's really going to dictate how you're going to utilize the property and the benefits you can potentially get from it. So in terms of politics, there are state and local taxes. Most jurisdictions have that. If cost is a big issue or a big factor, really important to look up the taxes and the locality as well, because some localities actually have real estate taxes and some don't. So a locality real estate tax will be in addition to any state real estate taxes that you may owe. So that's like really important to consider. A lot of people don't know that, but real estate taxes can really, really impact your mortgage. For example, I'm in the DC real estate market. DC does tend to have a lot of tax-friendly laws for homeowners, first-time homeowners. If you make under a certain amount of money, that's very different to Maryland, where I was looking in the Baltimore market and their real estate taxes tended to be very, very high. So you also want to look at rental licensing requirements. So this is really, really important because when I purchased in DC, I didn't realize how tenant-friendly DC was. And you want to make sure that you are adhering to all rental requirements. So for example, I think Atlanta actually just passed an Airbnb related law where you can only rent up to a certain amount of time, certain things like that. Definitely keep those things into consideration, because if you would hate to spend so much time and money investing in a property thinking that you're going to put it on Airbnb just to find out that it's illegal to rent Airbnb more than 45 days or something like that in that locality. So definitely making sure you're looking at those rental licensing requirements and those legal and regulatory requirements, especially if you plan on renting the property, or especially if you're buying a commercial property, or if you're planning on changing the use of the property. That's another thing. I know a lot of real estate investors and developers fall into issues with that. They'll see a property, they're like, oh, this is the perfect property, I can turn this into a duplex. They spend a lot of money, they spend a lot of time just to run into barriers with zoning. Then they realize like, oh, oops, I couldn't actually turn this into a duplex. So to try to avoid that, make sure you're really looking at the requirements in that area that you want to purchase in or invest in. Local ordinances as well. So, look, some localities can just be really weird. So just making sure you're doing that. And then also affordable housing considerations. How likely will you be able to maybe find some affordable housing units, or potentially even rent affordable housing units? Some localities have restrictions on the amount of homes that can be built, or they'll have requirements that a certain amount of homes in a certain area have to be designated to low income communities. So different things like that, regulatory considerations, tax considerations, zoning considerations can all have an impact on where you decide to purchase your home.
Are you looking for a community of like-minded individuals and access to experts in real estate?
Yeah.
Are you interested in real estate but need more support and guidance?
You know who it is?
The Black Real Estate Dialogue presents the Real Estate Investing Community. No matter how much or how little real estate experience you have, we've created a community for you because your perspective is important. All right, tell me, where's the number one place where you can do Q&A with experienced guest speakers 2 times per month? How about unlimited access to past guest speakers' recordings? What about a private Slack channel to engage in daily discussion with everybody in the community to share resources and support each other? Head on over to blackrealestatedialogue.com. That's blackrealestatedialogue.com. It's the real estate investing community presented by the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Come join us today.
Okay, so the economic considerations. So this is huge, and I'm surprised a lot of people don't actually do this before they look into purchasing a home or investment property, but you definitely should look at the area. You should look at not only just what are current interest rates, but also any availability of first-time home buyer programs. That is so key. Some states, some cities have so much better first-time home buyer programs than others. For example, DC is a very high cost of living, high cost, expensive real estate market. So there are a lot of first-time home buyer programs to help people in DC buy homes, because if they didn't have that, I mean, it would be really, really hard for someone who's a teacher or a firefighter to be able to purchase in such a high, expensive market. An example of how I utilize first-time home buyer programs, or how I utilize location to take advantage of first-time home buyer programs, is I originally wanted to purchase a property in Baltimore, and I didn't income qualify for a Bank of America grant that was about $17,000. So I didn't income qualify in the Baltimore market, but I realized that because the DC market, the real estate is so much more expensive, they allowed you to make more money. So I did income qualify in the DC market. So I decided to go ahead and just purchase that property in DC instead of Baltimore to take advantage of that $17,000 grant. So those are little things that you can really take into consideration, and those can have huge impacts. For me, whether I purchased in Baltimore or DC didn't really matter. Either way, it was going to be a rental property. I just wanted somewhere that would be close to a university, whether that be Howard or Georgetown or Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, whatever the case may be. But those are things that I considered when I was purchasing my home or my rental property. Also job prospects, that's huge. For example, Amazon is actually coming to Northern Virginia, which is like 20 minutes from where I live. So that was like a huge thing for our area, bringing jobs. And not just job prospects in terms of attracting tenants, but job prospects in terms of making sure your tenants can be gainfully employed. Like if you purchased a rental property in a rural area and your tenant worked on a farm and then they lost their job, it's not very like, it's going to be a lot harder for them to try to find another job. They may have to eventually like maybe move, be like, oh, I have to move. I found a job an hour away. I might have to move. You know what I mean? Like it just makes sense to really take that into consideration, like the job prospects, and not just to attract tenants, but to also have making sure that your tenants have the capacity to be able to have gainful employment. That's really important. Price obviously is really important. Median income and per capita income. So this is huge. I personally, I look at all the data, like the demographic data and locations that I invest in. This is what I did big, like really big before I started investing heavily in DC, before I even settled on Southeast DC, was because I saw the demographic information. I saw the median income. I saw the rise in the median income. Every state, most states and localities have demographic information, public information, if you look it up on your county website or your state website. And if you can't find it on your state or locality's website, you can go to the US Census Bureau website. They have these amazing tools where you can just literally put in a city, put in the state, and it'll tell you like median income, per capita income. It'll tell you healthcare considerations, like how many jobs there are, how many like employers there are. It just tells you so much information, and you can compare that to like previous years, has different years there. So you can see like, oh, wow, this community, their median income was $40,000 5 years ago. Now it's 60,000. So this is a growing community. Another thing I like to do is I like to look on the county website to see any new developments coming around. That's where I try to target. If I'm like, oh, a shopping center is coming, it may not come with until like 2 to 3 years. So now is the perfect time to get in. But that might seem like a long time, but you don't want to buy a house near a shopping center when it's already almost built, because now everyone knows it's there, and you're not the only one thinking that same idea. Other people are going to want to buy it too. So the key is to actually see the zoning plans and see what's coming before it actually becomes really public knowledge. That's what I do. A friend of mine who's a real estate investor, or a real estate agent, she also told me to take a look at laws that are friendly to real estate developers. So if you start to see a city or a town passing a lot of laws that are friendly to real estate developers, like lower taxes or tax abatement or things to encourage real estate developers, you might want to take a look at those areas, because it could mean that one, the city is trying to build up that area, and two, real estate developers might be attracted to that area. Definitely politics and economics. A lot of people probably don't consider that because they might think of some of the other things that, is it close to my job? Is transportation? How big is the house? Does it have the amenities I want? But a lot of people aren't really thinking about some of those other factors. And for me, those other factors are really important, especially if you're looking at a rental property. And for me, I feel like I was able to select such an ideal location where my property went up in value over $150,000 in 2 years, because I was so strategic about being in a specific zip code. So let's look at personal residence considerations. So what you're going to be like factoring in when you're looking for personal residence is going to be completely different from what you're going to want to be like factoring in when you're looking for a rental property. So with the personal residence, most people look at 3 main things, right? They look at family, work, and price. Family is probably the biggest thing, because that'll dictate literally the size of the property. If you have kids, you need more bedrooms, you might need a yard. If you have a dog, if you have kids, you might want to be close to a school system, amenities like having grocery stores nearby, gyms, community centers, things like that may be of interest. Safety and job prospects may be important. Like you may want to be somewhere that's close to your job, easy commute. Work tends to be one of people's biggest influencers when they're choosing the location for where they want to live. So this is why, I'm just a little off topic, but I feel like the real estate market just was turned on its head during COVID, primarily because people weren't tied to their job anymore, like physically tied to their jobs anymore. So what you were seeing were people in high, really expensive real estate markets, which were primarily urban areas. Let's think, New York was huge. Urban areas, one, were biggest hit by COVID because larger populations, one. So a lot of people left those bigger cities. New York saw a huge exodus. So that's one. Two, now you can pretty much work anywhere. I had a friend that was she worked in Mexico for like 6 months, because everyone's working from home. And so I found that, or I felt like when people were working from home, they were more inclined to disrupt the real estate markets, because places that traditionally may not have had a lot of homeowners now have homeowners. Interest rates are really high. Interest rates were really low. And I just feel like a lot of people from really high, expensive real estate markets transitioned to cheaper real estate markets because they were no longer tied to their job.
Hi everyone, Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button, and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.